Welcome back to Moon Harbor Heroes. Today's issue is Storyteller, issue 13, The Cost. On the cover, two women stand on opposing sides of a pier in a foggy London port, their Victorian silhouettes barely visible through the smog. The woman closer to the shore holds a coin purse in her hands, dangling it tauntingly at the other. We turn the page and our story begins. We open on the Storyteller once again in his study. This time, he is staring out the window at a fox and a lynx, wrestling in his lush green courtyard. From the distance, we cannot tell if they're fighting or playing. Without looking at the reader, he speaks. A fox and cat, two vicious foes, bound eternally in love's true throes. Another life, a tale repeated, a love victorious or defeated. Will they join? Will wedding bells chime? Perhaps so, in another lifetime, but for now a love is lost. In this next issue, The Cost. He steps away from the window and we follow him for a few panels. As he steps out of the screen and into a gutter, he reveals a comic framed and hung on the wall, which matches the one we just saw. We turn the page and our story begins. Alright, before we get started, do you want to give a general overview of who you are, all those good things?
Sure. I am Jess, they, she pronouns, and I am an illustrator, writer, and sensitivity editor, and avid play enthusiast.
Excellent. Jess and I work together IRL, and when I was thinking through who I wanted to play with me for these lifetimes, I immediately was like, well, I know that Jess writes erotica and is an illustrator and is brilliant, and I think that they would be a really good fit. So I'm excited that we get the opportunity to do this thing for the second lifetime of the Crossing the Seven Stars arc.
I'm very honored to be here. It sounds a lot of fun, and I can't wait.
So we are playing Abashed, the Devil Stood, and Felt How Awful Goodness Is, which is a two-player TTRPG by Ennis Rook Bashe. And you mentioned that you actually knew Ennis?
Yeah, I'm friends with Ennis through a couple of LARPs that we both do together. I've known them for a few years. They're delightful.
Awesome. I'm so excited to play this game. It's really, really beautifully written.
It is.
So for those of you who may not have played before, Abashed the Devil Stood, and Felt How Awful Goodness Is, the whole title, is a game about forbidden love between good and evil, which makes it a perfect fit for Lynx and Vixen. One character is the archetypal conventional notions of good, and the other one is evil. There are three possible outcomes for this game. Good can triumph over evil, and you can start your new life together, or vice versa, or one of you can destroy the other. Since Crossing the Seven Stars is a game in which expressly they do not end up together until the last lifeline, I bet you all can guess as the audience which ending we're going to end up with. Meaning we're kind of whose line is it anyway this, where the points don't actually matter. There is a token system of like who wins two of the three scenes, or three of the three scenes. But yeah, we're going to probably end up ignoring that unless we happen to end up neutral, which is ideal.
Yeah.
So one thing that happens in this expressly is safety mechanics. Ennis recommends 3 different safety mechanics, which are X card, lines and veils, and script change. So I'm going to scroll down and look at those really quick, but we can talk through if we have any lines, veils, etc.
You go first. I'm terrible at these. I'm the worst when it comes to listing my boundaries. I'm one of those people where, especially in roleplay situations, especially in romantic roleplay situations, like I always am the one where I'm like, I get no boundaries are coming to mind off the top of my head. I'll tell you if I find them, which is not really that great.
I mean, that sounds perfect with the way that the script change system is set up of like the pause, stop mechanic. That's helpful. I tend to put a pretty hard limit on like no violence towards children and no pedophilia in general. I am pretty hard about like, we should not cross that line.
Okay.
I also tend to try to avoid sexual assault. I think in a game that is good and evil, sex will likely happen, but it also says that like these two characters are very drawn to each other. So I'm going to want to make sure that we expressly can get consent, you know?
Yeah, the game does say that it does deal with some like gray consenty areas like power dynamics and like negotiation using sex act as a bargaining tool, which is kind of gross in real life, but in the world of a game, it can be a little bit more, especially a game about good v evil. Like some of those things are supposed to feel kind of gross and
Right. This is not a healthy relationship in any capacity.
yeah, they're not. They're not good for each other. But I'm fine with those hard rules.
Excellent. Any other lines and or veils you want to toss up, or do you want to just find them as we come across them?
I guess a hard line would be like, I have weird limits when it comes to specifically implying that a character's love interest is actually not interested in them. Like, they're just doing it for manipulation or they're doing it out of pity. So that would probably be like a veil. Anything, it can definitely be a plot point, but I don't want to dwell on that for too long.
Excellent. I agree with that. That sounds very doable. Excellent. So if those are all the safety mechanic stuff, Jess and I have both read over the document and both are familiar with the safety mechanics. And if we get to a point where we need to pause, we will say pause. We'll probably pause the recording and re-edit. I will be pretty transparent in the recording and being like, hey, we took a pause here. We're going to restructure, which might get edited out by our amazing editor, Crumpet. It may not. We'll find out on Friday when this goes live. So, sweet. Do you want to start with the answer these questions together on page 6?
Sure. It starts on page 4. Oh, page 6 of the document, page 4.
Yeah, you're right. It's page 4 of the packet itself. Yep.
Uh-huh. Did you want to play evil or good?
I am fine doing either. Do you have a preference?
I prefer evil because I'm a demon.
I was thinking it was probably going to end up playing good. Knowing what I've seen you roleplay before, or like how we've talked about role-playing before, I kind of figured I would end up as the good side. But I was cool with either option. So I'm cool with playing good.
I can play good. My good tends to wax a little bit bubbly and annoying. And I don't want to subject listeners to that.
I will likely go like lilty and innocent as good. So very corruptible.
Okay.
Before we get to character creation questions, do we first pick who we are? Or do we start with the when and where are you?
And those are just like sample characters. So, I mean, I guess we can go with something very similar to it that fits the setting.
Yeah, and the cool thing about this is like this is supposed to be like lifetimes over like many, many centuries. So like Vixen and Lynx are modern superheroes, but the last one were 2 thieves in like medieval Ireland.
Okay.
So we can really set this whenever. This can be the future. This can be the far past. This can be Jack the Ripper time frame. Like this can be literally whenever.
Dealer's choice. I am a fan of time periods for sure. Oh, one of the examples is a superhero and an agent of chaos.
I saw that. I was probably going to skip that one since we have them canonically as superheroes, but I love that. I had a concept that literally just popped in my head, doing like Victorian time frame of like young prostitute, and I don't know what the word for like a John is in young sex worker, and like a John in like Victorian England.
Sure. Which one would you prefer to play? Because they can go either way.
I feel like since it could go either way, maybe we want to like switch it up and do the sex worker as the good one and the conscriptor of the sex worker as evil.
Sure. And evil could be like a like a higher ranking noble last.
I love
because that way I think the whole point is that there has to be like a little bit of power imbalance. And for these to be, from the way that I interpreted, it's got to be that the social power leans toward the evil person, but while the power in the relationship and desire leads toward good, right?
That's how I was reading it. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So I will be a very queer noblewoman in love with a very kind-hearted. That sounds fun.
And I think I'm expressly a trans woman. I think that this sex worker is a trans person. So when and where are you? We just answered. What are the names and genders? I haven't thought of a single name for these characters yet.
Oh no.
Names are so hard.
Going around with the 3-headed Hydra, and like 2 of the heads look really badass, and one of them has like eyes going in 2 different directions, looking really dumb. And the 2 badass heads are like my ability to improv settings, my ability to improv scenarios, and the one with the eyes looking in 2 different directions is my ability to improv names.
That's fantastic and very, very true.
So Victorian names. Weren't flower names really popular in the Victorian era?
Yeah, I think they were.
I feel like I should have like a really like all I can think of is Petunia, but that's making me think of Harry Potter, and I don't want to do that.
I think I'm I think I'm Grace.
Okay. I think I will be Charlotte. A good, upstanding name.
And I'm going to use she, her pronouns.
I will be using she, her pronoun.
In this case, I'm probably the representation of missing links. In the modern relationship, Vixen is the one with all the money, more of the socialite. So I would say you're probably Vixen and I'm Lynx.
Okay.
All right, so the next question is, which one of you spared the other's life once?
That's juicy. So, because we're going with a Victorian setting, right? A lot of Victorian setting and like stakes and stuff is less like, oh, drastic, spare their life with sword in hand, and a lot more like social and like spared their life in like what context, sort of, right? So it could be either one of us, the way that I'm interpreting it.
I kind of like the idea that it's me to like switch up the power dynamic a little bit at the
Mhm.
beginning. I wonder if it's a save your life in that like you were with another sex worker and like there was like a noble nearby who could have caught you and I like
Mhm.
saved you from getting caught.
That's exactly what I was thinking. like, like you saved me from ruining my own life by getting caught with a, worker of the fairer gender, which would have ruined my reputation.
Oh, I love that. So then people do not know that you are queer.
Yes, because everybody was queer in the Victorian era, but nobody talked about it.
That is very, very true. Cool. Who are the most important to you, anyway, characters in this setting?
I feel like Charlotte has a lot of respect for her family. And like because she is a noble and she's expected to do a lot, the most important characters to her would be maintaining the social status of her family and like other peers.
I love that. I think Grace is also very family driven, but I think she's got a younger sister. And I think that she's trying very hard to keep her younger sister, Adelaide, from also becoming a sex worker like she is.
Okay.
Which people in the setting do both of you have a connection to?
I was gonna say I could see them being both connected like via siblings. Like you're trying to keep your character's sister from resorting to prostitution, right? And pushing her toward having like a respectable job for a woman of her means in that time period. And I was thinking, I'm like, my character could have a younger sibling who is like either friends or flirtatious or whatever with your character's sister. So that they both have that like drive of like, okay, we need to keep you on the straight and narrow. I don't want to tell you that you're not allowed to be with this person that you clearly care about, but also kind of know your place.
Ooh, I really like that. I think that flirtation trip is really fun. Especially if I'm like, hey, if you marry this nobleman's or this nobleman, that your younger sibling, if you
Mhm.
marry him, then it'll elevate you from your status.
Yes. And on the flip side, my character's entire goal is like looking at her younger, probably brother, because that would make the most sense. Younger brother and being like, I don't care how much you love her, you can't marry the maid.
That's really good. That's really fun and juicy.
Yeah.
All right. So the next part, we answer our respective column of questions and we tell the other player what they would know. For purposes of podcasting, I feel like we should probably answer all these out loud and then just say, like, you probably know this, you probably don't know this.
Yeah.
So do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first for these?
Well, my first one is very easy. How did you find out about your powers of destiny? She's a noblewoman in the Victorian era. She was born into it. She's aware.
I think I was conscripted into this. After my mother died, someone approached me and was like, hey, if you want to make a living, here's a way to do it. I see this very much as a means to an end rather than my forever job.
Okay.
So then my next one is, who believes that you can save them? I think my sister does. I think Adelaide very much believes that through my work and through us working together, we can elevate ourselves out of this.
So mine is who are your followers and what marks them? And I was seeing Charlotte as kind of this almost reverse, like Mr. Darcy. Like she's very popular. She's very well known in noble circles, and people expect a lot from her. And like she is known for while having kind of a dry wit and not being the best at high society, still being from a family that is noble enough and has enough pull and stature that a lot of people flock to kind of placate.
I love that. My next one is, what weapons do you yield? And I think the sexuality is my strongest weapon. But I think I also have like some sort of like physical weapon that I carry with me Like, I think I probably have a knife on me at pretty much all times because to survive on the streets, you have to.
What has been your most infuriating failure? I think so. I'm going to shamelessly snatch this from one of my like favorite terrible movies, which is Crimson Peak, and I think I'm going to make her most infuriating failure that she loves writing, she loves poetry, she loves books, and she has written a book that she tried to get published under a male pseudonym, did not take.
Oh, I love that. My next one is, how much faith do you have in yourself and your inability to be corrupted? I do not have a lot of faith in myself. I think I've already been corrupted by starting into this work, even though I know that this is a way to save my family. But I think that I see myself as being on a like slippery slope downward.
Do you answer to anyone? If so, who? Yes, but in with the expressly in her family, the person she answers to the most is going to be her father, and then probably nebulously also her mother. And like, while she is respectful at paying attention to like other elders in her family, like aunts and uncles and grandparents, she does not necessarily answer to them.
Excellent. My next one is, what is your most physically striking trait? And this is going to go back to missing links. I think I have like green, almost cat-like eyes. They're not supernatural, but they are like very, very green.
I got, what legendary weapon do you wield? Propriety?
I
Is that a
mean,
weapon?
that I think that counts as far as this story.
Yeah.
Cash. Cash is the most legendary weapon there is.
Money.
And my last question is, what have you survived so far? And I think I've kind of answered those a little bit. Death of my mother, working on the streets, living on the streets, that kind of situation.
So I have two more questions, which is, what is your most unique physical trait? Which, let's just be self-indulgent and say that she's really, really pretty. Like, like, kind of the degree of so pretty that if it were to get out that she was queer, it'd be like, but why? You could easily land a husband, as if that's what it's about. Like, and the last question that I have is, who hurt you first? Like, honestly, probably her parents, because she's a very ambitious girl, but she is a girl.
Cool. I love that. In terms of what you would know, I think you know about my sister, obviously. So you know that Adelaide believes that she can save me. You definitely know that I carry a knife, because I think it's just kind of common knowledge that, like, if you hire a sex worker, they have some sort of weapon on them at all times. And obviously, you know about my most physically striking trait. And I think you know about that my mother is dead. I think that my sister probably would have told your brother that.
Mm.
So I guess the only thing you really don't know about it is how much faith do I have in myself, which is not a lot. So yeah, everything else, pretty open book.
I on the flip side, as for me, I think you actually probably only know like the Who Are You followers, that she is very popular, that she has a lot of other nobles who are aware of and in awe of her family, and that she is a noble. Well, and I guess that she's very hot, but that's about it. That's all you would really know about her.
Excellent. All right, so the next part, the gameplay itself. So we have 3 scenes of negotiation, then 3 post-negotiation scenes where we follow through on our promises. Then we have 1 final confrontation. We have a whole list of like, we each get a token based on these things. So for instance, evil wins a token if they get good to admit to hating something or someone other than the forces of evil, etc. There's 4 options there. Good wins a token if they get evil to admit regretting an act of cruelty or violence, etc. I think I've got 6 different ways to get tokens.
Mm-hmm.
And the first negotiation starts at a neutral place. They recommend when you're playing like kind of big war things, like a destroyed battlefield or a forest or something like that. So where is our neutral setting? Where are we?
Neutral. Unfortunately, it can't be either where like the established that your character works out of, or the established that your sister's character works out of, because your sister's character would work out of my family's house. What is a neutral place where like people of different classes would be this time period?
If we're going like classic, like literary Victorian, I feel like a dock is always a good place. You get that like fun fog rolling in kind of place.
Yeah.
Because the first negotiation, we both know that no one has followed you here. And this is like a planned meeting. So a dock feels like a appropriate place for us to be meeting.
On the dock. You could say that they were like going to meet one another to discuss the situation with our respective siblings and needed to do it away from prying ears.
I think that's perfect. I think that my sister has probably like worked her way into your house, but no one knows. Like everyone thinks she's like a niece of some nobleman or a niece of like some like secondary, like artisan or something like that. She's like made up this like false life, and you and I are the only two who know the truth at this point.
Okay.
So for the negotiations, it looks like it starts with the good character asking you for a concession. You can say what you're willing to give, what you would give in exchange, and then I would make another bid. So do you want to start with the scene with us just meeting up at the dock here?
Yeah, absolutely. Did you want to set the scene or?
Sure. I think I was probably there first. I think I
Okay.
probably respect your time more than you respect my time. So I was probably
Yeah.
there like early. And I think I'm sitting on the dock with my feet in the water. My shoes are next to me. They're very holy, that's not the right word. They have holes in them. I don't think I hear you approaching from behind me.
Okay. So it's like it takes a few minutes after you, like a while after you get there after the designated time, and my character walks up like very clearly having been dropped far enough elsewhere that it took her a minute to walk to this location. Did not want to know where she was. And she's very soft-footed and walks up behind you and just kind of
I scramble to my feet, and there's a moment where I like look at my shoes to think if I should put my shoes on or not, and then I don't, and I'm like immediately like, uh, "Hello, Mistress Charlotte. It is good to see you."
hello, Greg. And I like shift vaguely uncomfortable, but just with the surroundings, like I'm kind of peering around. I know we weren't followed, but docks are full of whoever knows.
Thank you for agreeing to meet me here.
Well, it is in both of our vested interests to do so.
Uh, yes. What is your brother's name?
James.
Excellent. Yes.
Wait, what is your sister's name?
Adelaide.
Okay,
Yes. My sister is very taken with Master James.
I know. James seems rather smitten as well.
Uh, yes, I do believe that to be the case. Um, I know that my status is a problem in this, but I want you to know that our mother she was of a nobler sort. So you have nothing to worry about.
Your mother may have been of standing, but it does not mean that I have nothing to worry about. The only reason that Adelaide has been allowed to continue her employ with my family and working in that capacity is because no one of my family is aware of what you do.
Yes, I understand that to be the case, and I am much indebted to you for that. Thank you. What can I do to make sure that that remains the case?
Your sister and my brother are both very young. They are smitten and taken with one another. It's actually quite cute. But just for the good of both of our families, it is best that they do not continue this flirtation beyond something innocent.
With all due respect, Mistress Charlotte, I do not believe that to be in the best interest for my family. I believe that I believe that Adelaide could do well in your family, and that it would do well for her to maintain this relationship with your brother.
I don't think you've considered what would happen to my family and yours at the same time if this information were to get out, which it will. Information always does.
Well, I could stop. I could cease the work and look for other employ if you could ensure that any whispers are shut down.
I'm not sure how you think I can make this go away. It's not like you're not known.
I believe I could disappear for a while, not forever, but a few months. I have some funds saved up, and I could slink away into the shadows, as it were, if you think that that would be of help.
How much money do you traditionally make in a week?
Fuck, in Victorian era, do they use pounds? Shillings.
Shillings, farthing, halfpenny, halfpenny.
Cool. About 30 shillings. Enough to pay for room and board, and sometimes enough food for Adelaide and myself.
I will pay you triple that, plus extra.
You'll pay me triple that plus extra for my sister to stop speaking to your brother?
Yes.
Mistress Charlotte, being in your family would undoubtedly make her 50 times that wealthy. She'd be marrying into a noble family, and that would change her life and the life of many, many others.
Mostly the life of my family as we are reduced to jokes.
Do you not believe that people should marry for love?
Of course not. I'm not a child. But since you seem, well, determined for this, if you stop doing what you're doing, I will extend my offer 3 times that plus extra 100 whatever shillings a week, and I will make your sister my personal servant. Then I will make sure that she stays away from my brother. And this will come with an increase to her salary as well. Is that enough for you?
I will talk to her and see what I can do, but I cannot guarantee anything. She is strong-headed, my sister.
Yes, I've noticed.
So it sounds like I was the first person to give in that capacity. So I get to draw for a card for one of your memories. Since we're doing this over roll 20, I'll probably just roll. You have 8 options for memory, so I'll just roll a 1d8 and
Sure.
pick that. So let me look at the list again. All right, so that was a 4. So that is a memory of feeling helpless. So what is one memory you have of feeling helpless?
When Charlotte was 13, it was her first time being taken to a high society function where she was, dressed the way she's supposed to, perform the way she's been taught to, speaking the way she was supposed to, and being forced to walk and talk and exist by everyone's standard while under intense scrutiny and unable to leave the first time.
I think okay, so they can ask an open-ended question, clarifying question about the memory fragment. Did anyone say anything to you that night that particularly stood out?
Yes, a handful of other girls around her age kept commenting on how pretty her hair was and how lucky she was that she would probably get a handsome husband. And that just kind of, it was meant to be something comforting, and it just filled her with terror on a husband.
Excellent. So then we now get the post-negotiation scene where we fulfill or don't fulfill our respective promises. And then you'll get to set the next scene of our meeting.
Sure.
So I think we see like a handshake where I agree to those terms. And then the next thing we see is me approaching Adelaide. And I don't think we actually see the conversation. We don't hear the dialogue. We just see me like talking to her and her getting gradually angrier and angrier and like shoving me and like yelling at me. It is very like 14-year-old girl being angry at her older sister.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some like not face slapping, but like I try to like grab her hands and she slaps them away. And then she turns and like runs crying out of our shared room.
And I think like the second part of that would be like whenever she shows up for work the next day, the character is there and just kind of politely informs her that she is being like changed to her duties to be my character's personal servant as opposed to general house servant.
Excellent. So then where do we meet next? What is our next scene?
Let's see. Why don't we make the next scene like late evening in the foyer of like my family's home?
Excellent. Did we plan to meet here, or is this an accidental we bump into each other?
Let's make it accidental.
I think I often come to your house because I have agreed to stop working as a sex worker. So my day is like looking for work, trying to get work. But I often come to your house to like walk Adelaide home after her like night is over because the streets of London are dangerous. But I think it is pouring, so I am soaked. And one of the like doorsmen invites me inside and is like, "You can wait for your sister inside here. Just stay in the shadows where no one will see you."
Yes. So as you're sitting waiting in this like kind of probably dim foyer, I walk in like holding a candle and I look, I'm like, you are absolutely soaked to the bone, Grace.
Yes, Miss Charlotte, it's raining.
And I can see that. Storming more like.
And yes, it is. It's the heavens are opening up out there. And I'm trying not to make eye contact because I know that I probably should not have been seen around here, given our most recent conversation.
Yeah, she notices that you're not making any eye contact, and they just shamelessly checking you out. No one's around. No one will see. Fine. She very politely goes, "Would you like to come sit with me in the drawing room? There's a fire going. It's warmer. Adelaide will be a moment."
I was told I should wait here. I don't want
the people my family pays.
Yes, Mr. Charlotte, thank you. And I'll follow you to the drawing room.
It's a pretty nice drawing room. You know, there's a couple of bookshelves. It's not as vast as a library. And there is a fire and a couple of comfortable chairs nearby. And she kind of motions for you to sit.
I look at the chair and then look at how like sopping wet I am. And then I opt not to sit. And I kind of just stand near the flames. And I think the way like the flames are like looking my face, we see like my green eyes really, really like piercing in the night. And I look at you and I'm like, thank you. This was very kind of you.
Common courtesy, but you're welcome nonetheless.
How is Adelaide doing in her first few weeks?
Well, she is temperamental at most. I think she was trying to break my ribs while helping me dress, but got over it. She is quiet when she's unhappy.
When you mentioned you dressing, I definitely like blushed. And then when you mentioned Adelaide being unhappy, I looked up directly into your eyes. I've noticed that as well. She seems distraught. She won't speak at the house. She barely eats.
No matter. I make sure she eats at least twice with me. Doesn't do to have a servant withering away.
You
And like, I straight up notice the way you're blushing and looking and just kind of lay it on thicker. Like lean over so that the firelight catches the like edge of her jaw and just looks up. I do prefer when women around me eat as opposed to wasting away.
I've heard that women around you eat quite well. And then I look very, very stunned at my own boldness.
Charlotte is delighted and just goes, "Oh, some of them. And some of them lack technique."
I look at you, I think a second too long, and then like step away from the fire, and I'm like, it's very hot in here, isn't it?
It's quite warm. And there's a well-timed like crack thunder. The storm is getting worse, not better.
It will be a long night tonight getting home.
I want you to stay.
I don't think that is a good idea, Mistress Charlotte.
Clearly, it's too dangerous to walk home.
It's safer than most nights. No men lurk in the shadows on nights like tonight. We can survive the lightning and the rain.
See no reason for you to get needlessly wet.
I will stay if I will spend the night. If you turn a blind eye to where Adelaide spends the night.
I will not ask questions as to what bed Adelaide sleeps in, as long as you make sure she doesn't ask questions about where you do.
I kind of nod. It's very small, very almost imperceptible. And I think that was me giving in again. That sounds like I don't know. We both kind of gave in a little bit there.
Yeah, a little bit. I think it was kind of a tie.
Cool. Do you want to do a memory, or do you want me to do a memory?
I will do memory time.
Cool. So
Where am I?
I have 9 options on my list, I believe. 9 cards to draw.
Let me roll a d9. Do one dice roll.
That's not a real die, but I love it. We could do that on things
Number
like
generators
Sidekick.
exist.
Exactly.
I got a 5. So that would be a memory of what or who you're fighting for.
I think the way that manifests is we see Adelaide walk in the room, and I immediately like straighten up and like pull my coat tighter around my body. And I'm like, Adelaide, Mr. Charlotte has invited us to spend the night tonight. I will be set up in the servants' quarters, and I expect you to join me there when you are done with your work.
And Charlotte just very calmly like stands from where she was sitting and dusts off the front of her dress and goes, "Oh, nonsense. Adelaide knows her way to the guest room."
I think I follow you to your room, but I can't make eye contact with Adelaide. I just like look down, but as I pass her, I like squeeze her hand and like lean in and just like whisper like, "Go see him," and then I follow you up the stairs towards your chamber.
I feel like the like one thing that you get from like a love scene between these two characters is that Charlotte is actually very nice behind closed doors. She's just kind of very aware of her role outside of closed doors.
I like that. I think we can fade to black on that. I don't think we need to explicitly play out that sex scene.
Makes sense.
But it happens. Everyone involved knows that it happens. And I think our next scene, I think this should be very public. I think this is at a ball at your estate.
Yes.
I knew that Adelaide was going to be staying late at work, but something has happened and I have to come tell her. And I think it's probably like 3 months later. Like, this is a while later.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that I like come in the door, man is like, you can't be here. But I am like, I need to see my sister. And he lets me in because I think I've probably been around several times since then, both to see you and to pick up her.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I am allowed in, again, with the caveat that like I can only go in servants' quarters and such. But I am looking for her, and I imagine she is probably with you.
Um, yeah, at a ball, she's probably nearby me. But I feel like since the night of the thunderstorm and Adelaide getting to spend the night with James, she's started talking more. So I've begun avoiding her.
That's
Just
delicious.
so I while you're looking for her, I kind of like bump into you, skulking around my own home, dressed in a ball gown.
Excellent. I think I'm in my nicest dress, which is still in no way like appropriate for being at this event. I think like you dress your staff for this event, so like they are all like dressed in like the most professional maids attires that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
But I am in like my nicest gown, which is not nearly nice enough. And I bump into you, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mistress Charlotte. I was looking for my sister."
Hello, Grace. You look beautiful tonight.
Thank you. So do you. That is a quite striking gown.
I should hope so. It was done on purpose. I'm avoiding your sister.
Did she tell you?
Tell me what.
My eyes widen, and I take like 3 big steps back. Never mind. Nothing.
Tell me what.
Nothing.
And I just kind of look around, grab your hand, and tug you into like the library where there's nobody. You wanted to know if your sister told me something, and I've been avoiding her trying to tell me something all day because she has a tendency to prattle when I'm trying to read. Besides, I would much rather hear it from your lips.
I do not think it was something you would wish to hear at all, Mistress Charlotte.
If it is something that I would rather not hear, I'd rather hear it from your lips.
I had a bit of a revelation while I was doing laundry today.
Oh?
I have not washed any of Adelaide's womanly garments in about 3 months.
And my face goes white. See.
I don't know what we should do.
And she just kind of stares at Grace for a moment before like looking away and goes, I know what needs to be done, but and it trails off as she looks away.
I don't want anything to happen to my sister.
I'm not a monster.
I am not so sure that that's the case.
She looks up and goes, no harm will come to your sister. If you stay the night, there's a gown you can borrow of mine.
I look at you very intensely and I'm like, I will stay the night and I will do this dance, but you have to understand that my sister's safety and her future is the only thing that matters to me. So, who is going to take care of her if something happens?
If you stay with me, I will make sure she is taken care of.
If I stay with you, you will tell your brother to marry her. I think this is the most like strong we've ever seen me. Like I'm like standing upright and like looking you in the eyes.
And she does not agree with you, but she just kind of walks over. There's nobody else around. And very gently like reaches up and like kind of caresses the line of your cheek and goes, I will take care of it.
I think we probably kissed there.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's likely the first time we've ever kissed. Like I feel like we've been sexually active, but I don't think there's ever been that kind of sexual contact.
Yep. I'm also willing to concede that they don't make it back at all.
Excellent. Great. So that feels like you were probably the one who gave in there.
Yes.
So then you get to roll one of my memories, and then that is our third negotiation. So then we have to figure out our final scene, and I've got an idea for it.
Okay. So I rolled a 9, which is those are the wrong question. A memory of someone you hate.
That's really good. I think we see the post-coital scene of the two of us, like, kind of bound together in this semi-dressed, semi-not dressed state. And I think I look over, and the memory of someone I hate is the memory of the first time that I met you, when I was trying to save me and you were cruel. And I think there's a lot of like hatred and also love there. Like it's very, very complicated. And I am looking at you very intensely. Do you mind if I just go ahead and make an action to take the
Yeah.
last step? Cool. And I get kind of close to you, and I think you're probably either close to asleep or asleep. And I'm like, no one will notice the scandal of your brother marrying the help. I'm sorry. And I step out in my like semi-dressed state into the main foyer off the library, enough so that people see me walking out semi-dressed in front of a room where you are also laying semi-dressed.
Okay.
Which I think is probably enough of an action. I don't necessarily think that we need to destroy each other in like literal death the way that it says. I think that that is destroying your reputation enough to count for that final action.
Yeah, well, there's one final confrontation, not just the final.
Oh,
that
you're
would
right.
be like the last post negotiation, right?
You are right. Let's go retcon that. Let's rewind, and we'll take that again.
Well, I was going to say we could work with that.
Cool. Do you want to take it back to a certain place, or do you want to just start it from me like leaving the room?
I mean, it's you leaving the room, and then there's probably a shot of me waking up the next morning, realizing that you are not there, and noticing that people are standing off from me before being called into my father's office to speak with him, which is scary.
Absolutely. Do you want to show that scene, or do you want to...
I think we can skip to the final confrontation.
Excellent.
Which would be like, I'm furious and storming, because I know where you guys live. It's never been there. I know where it is. And I like walk up and I bang on the door.
I think you hear me like encouraging Adelaide to slip out the back, and then I open the front door, and I'm like, "Mistress Charlotte, hello. What do I owe the pleasure?"
Please. And she just kind of like barges past you into the house.
I look to see if Adelaide has made it out, and I think she's just like closing the back door, so it is just the two of us here.
Mm-hmm. And Charlotte just kind of reaches into her purse and pulls out a small bag of coins and tosses it on the table. There, debt paid.
Mistress Charlotte, I was just doing what I had to for my sister.
Oh, yes, I'm sure you were. But I need you to know that what you have done to ruin my life is exactly what I should have expected from a whore. And that you may have done what you think would have helped your sister. And you may have brought me in 10 months of shame. She is now in my, or she will be soon as James decides to marry her to deal with his faux pas, fucking a child into her. But that means that she joins my family. You do not. And I will make her life hell for as long as I live. And then she just turns around and goes, goodbye, Grace.
I think Grace starts to respond, and then looks down at the money, and by the time she looks up, you are gone.
Yep.
And I think that's probably game.
It is. My poor good babies. I love them.
Excellent. All right. So, and just one more time for the listening audience at home, who are you? Where can people find you?
I am Jess. You can find me on Facebook at Jessie Draws for my illustration, on Instagram at Jessie Draws and Stuff, also for my illustration. And for people who like roleplay and talking about safety when it comes to roleplay and LARP scenarios, you can find my blog at triplethreatlarper at blogspot.com or on Twitter at triplethreatlarper.
Excellent. All right. So that is game. Jess, thank you so much for playing. That was really, really fun.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
We turn once more to the storyteller's study, this time looking at his desk. It's covered in financial papers, receipts, etc. He looks up at the reader, wearily saying, "For everything there is a price, a blush of fire, a sting of ice. We leave these two destroyed, alone, and travel back to the couple we've known. Vixen and Lynx in the present are bound, in past lifetimes were lost and were found, then lost again. 'Tis a shame for certain, time is a cruel and heavy burden." He sighs and stands, leaving the readers to look at the papers on the desk. As we zoom out and see the full picture, it seems to be a drawing across multiple pages of several iterations of Vixen and Lynx. Then the light in the study turns off and our comic comes to an end. Moon Harbor Heroes is produced by Anthony Sheets, T.P. Huth, and Elliot Peterson, and edited by Anthony Sheets and Sean Geddes. Anthony can be found on Twitter at IcyNewYear or at icynewyear.com. T is a theater artist and educator in the DC area. She can be found at T Playwright on Twitter or TPYouth94 on Instagram. Elliot can be found at Elliot Elen, ELLIOTYLEN on Twitter. Sean can be found at The Crumpit, THECRUMPIT on Twitter. Our logo was designed by Beautiful Beasties. She can be found on Instagram at beastly.doodles or on Patreon at patreon.com/beautifulbeasties. The music for this issue was Colorless Aura by Kevin MacLeod. Charlotte was played by Jess Comstock. Jess is a sensitivity editor, inclusivity enthusiast, LARP everythinger, and illustrator located just outside of Washington, D.C. Their art can be found at Jessie Draws and Stuff on Instagram or in the links provided in the show notes. And their RPG/LARP stuff can be found at triplethreatlarper.blogspot.com. Grace was played by T. Huth. This game was played using Abashed the Devil Stood and Felt How Awful Goodness Is by Ennis Rook Bashe. Ennis is a disabled queer badass from the New York area whose writing centers around the themes of hope and community. Their game design work can be found at ennisrook.itch.io. That's ENNISROOK.itch.io. If you want to get a hold of us, email us at moonharborheroes@gmail.com or find us on Twitter at moonharborcast. If you enjoyed this issue, please leave us a review on your podcatcher of choice or tell a friend. 5-star reviews and word of mouth are really the best way for us to keep bringing these stories to more people. If you'd like to support us financially, check us out at patreon.com/moonharborheroes. Supporting us there will give you access to bonus issues each month. And thank you for helping us save the world. We'll see you next issue.